So just waiting for the room to fill a bit. Slightly different pulse on the tempura again tonight. Little subtle differences. Low, I'll walk. Part of what I put in the description for this stream is, well, the title is Acknowledgements, Focus, and Working Together. And then in the description is talking about our community and the cross inspirations that arise. I'll just let you know, I'll walk, that you were certainly contributed to that sentence. Oh, thank you, I'll walk. That's because I hadn't put my microphone properly. I'm going to mute it for a second so nobody hears the creaking and adjustments. Thank you very much for that feedback. Okay, that should certainly be an improvement on my voice. Hello, Robin. Oh, I didn't know CW was doing it, but this is, this is a campfire. This is more of a campfire, as the thumbnail indicates, as opposed to a dumpster fire. So whatever fire suits the mood. And usually these quick scheduled ones run about an hour or so. Hello, Enjoy Being. And hello, Raksha. Oh, I got one more accoutrement to put towards the visual. So let me get that going. Oh, it's not just the visual, it's part of the energetic putting together of clothing. Okay, I'm going to put my camera on, get my headphones out of the way. Okay, let's put this camera on. Oh, not one more fashion adjustment before cameras go on. Okay, that's gonna work. Hello all. I know it'll take about 10 or 15 seconds before this gets transmitted, but that's okay, because I'll start now and it'll show up when it gets there. There we go. Enjoy Being does do great artistic work. As I might have mentioned that he has worked on, I believe, The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, either one or the other or both. Ah. So, I'm going to start this transmission with the title, Acknowledgements, Focus, and Working Together. And then I'll kind of go a little bit into cross inspirations, which is really where some of the acknowledgement is also about. As you know, on Friday night, I did a mystic brew that was about counter magic. And in a very focused language that it affirms what it is. In other words, commands, as opposed to so command ultimately, without sounding like it normally does, because the word command has a heaviness to it. But it's simply instruction. A command is instruction. If you're a foreman and you have a bunch of things to get done and you have a work crew, you're going to tell them what needs to be done. And proper instruction is about what is to be done, what are the effects that are going to be created. It doesn't engage in words like no and not. It doesn't deal with negation. It's about application. And that was the language that was used for our candle ritual, our counter magic. And so then last night, Joe from the Carolinas did a live stream that I was present for, and a few other people were present for it. And doing what I thought was great riffing on the name Bilderberg and turning it into builder, as in what building, builder bugs. I loved it. And as the stream started and he decided to use fire as part of a kind of a counter magic against the builder bugs, and the burning of sage, and the language he used about ideas, concepts, and plans was the same language I used. He also made sure that it was clean. It was about these ideas and plans, and not about people. So it was very, very clean. And so I wondered, had he seen my video and been inspired, in which case I love it, cross-inspiration? Or was it just something in the noosphere, where the collective mind operates? And he, on his own, he was moved to address the same kind of thing, the same kind of energetic fuckery that could be happening this weekend. Using fire as he had a little campfire going there, and using fire as an agent of change and its consumption, or in certain terms, breaking down, because that's really what destruction in its holistic sense is breaking down. The word classed, like an iconoclast, or even in our bones, we have osteoclasts and osteoblasts. Osteoblasts build bone tissue. Osteoclasts break down bone tissue. And the breaking down of bone tissue is actually important when, let's say we've had bad posture, and so the bone actually builds to accompany the weight, the bearing part of the bone. And then if posture corrects, then the osteoclast would actually break down the bone that was built up to accommodate an imbalance. And then the osteoblasts would build up a bone in the appropriate new area where there's greater stress. Hello, Amanda. So a clast, like an iconoclast, or my own term, arcanoclast, it is to break it down. Now, of course, in many ways that comes at the destruction, but I really wanted to be really clean and non-emotional, or as emotion, again, to engage the emotions in healthiness, in that we're setting things aright, that we're building, and part of building a lot of times is to demolish what is in the way, what prevents new and wholesome construction. And please use the word construction as, to make, to build. Maybe we shouldn't use the word. Again, the suffix con is something to always look at. But con in Spanish means, together. So to me, construct in many ways, is like a structure that we participate in. Con means with, right? So con, but so anyway, I was watching Joe from the Carolinas last night in his live stream, and especially the opening part, the language used when he was burning the sage, the focus when he was burning the sage, the concept of using fire to break down, to deconstruct any plans of fuckery that might arise from the builder bugs gathering. Ah, the spider was huge. Strong medicine there, Raksha. And so whether or not he was inspired by me or was inspired by the noosphere doesn't make any, doesn't matter. To me, it was a synchronicity bell moment, because the night before I had done a very similar thing. And so again, you know, what we're doing together should be, and needs to be, actually it needs to be, must be open source, that we build upon what other people lay down, and almost like in a musical sense, where somebody throws out a line and somebody else riffs on it, and some of it's going to have the same melody. You're going to, you know, use that melody and then add to it, expand upon it. So I was really jazzed that he went on Saturday night, went on relatively, you know, around midnight-ish, and it really turned into a great kind of gathering. Although there was some interesting triggering moments. Well, I can pull out the book and say, because Spider was part of one of the streams I did a week or so ago. I remember when I went to light my incense, Spider was right there for me. You know, Amanda, what's interesting about the word anchor is I've been listening to some older John Lash Gaian navigation experiment audio files, and some of them go back to 2013, because the Gaian navigation experiment was going on, I guess from 2011, possibly 2010, as far as, you know, something that he was actively engaged in. And there is a constellation that is kind of forming up, that, you know, and he watches the sky. He does celestics. Hello, Connie. And one of the kind of new forming constellations that he identified was the anchor. And he even has, there's a drawing with it, because he also has crew notes that go along with his audio files, and the crew notes have like a sketch, a rough sketch of the anchor with the stars that are composing it. And, you know, an anchor is an important part of navigation and on a ship, because sometimes you want to stop your movement and stay someplace, and you would then need to heave-ho the anchor overboard and secure a place so that you can hold the position for a while. And just being aboard a common ship that we are all crew members of. And that ship, for me, is the planet, the Earth. And the Earth has been piloted by parasites. And I think it would probably be easier to transfer the captainship, or at least the cruise ship, the crew part of it, and well, of course you have to have somebody who knows how to navigate. Might be a good time just to weigh anchor while all that's done. I originally had thought I was going to do another Mystic Muse music live stream this weekend, and I was planning it for last night. But Friday night left me kind of in a place where I can't quite do that yet. Even tonight was open mic night, and I decided not to go out and play. We're coming to a real change and shift with the new moon on Wednesday. And it's going to be a different kind of mood than the last two lunar cycles, especially with Bhudevi and her emphasis on the arts. Another interesting thing is how many of these meetings, like the Bilderberg meeting, the G7 meeting, I guess a NATO meeting, there's been a bunch of meetings all happening at once. And interestingly enough, there's a challenge that's coming to those who tell lies or convoluted or twisted truth is indicated not only in what looks to be like what will be the next Dakini shift, but even in regular astrology, the zodiacal astrology, as opposed to constellation sky reading. The constellations are in the sky and do not follow the 30-degree clockwork of the zodiac. So in celestics, the constellation that is associated to the sign Gemini, that constellation is the twins, which is Mercury, and communication, and sometimes mirror imaging, that kind of thing that twins can represent. And let me go. I know that since Raksha's there, I don't have to watch the stream right now, so I'm gonna just kind of stay on my focus a little bit. And let me just. So, the interesting thing is that even in regular astrology, based on the zodiac, there's an astrologer who does relatively short and I think fairly well focused videos. His name is Steve Judd, Judd, and Steve is the first name, spelled with a V. And at the end of May, he kind of put out a predictive forecast about June, and he mentions how a lot of this comes from him doing the dozens of private charts that he has to do for people, like what's ahead in their life. And after reading dozens of charts for individuals, that also leads him to what would be affecting world events. And one of the things he said after this new moon, and I don't remember the specifics of what else, like what planet. I think Saturn was right there in it with the new moon. But he put it together in a way that after this new moon, this is a time that people who are up to no good have a very good chance of being caught at being no good. So with that in mind, again, that's the regular astrology, and that's probably the astrology that the court astrologers, like people who do astrology for building bugs and builder bugs and the like, so the court astrologers will be making use of the zodiac. After all, it's their system of magic that they created, because it's archontic magic. It tracks the archontic influences in the solar system. And so with his zodiacal interpretation of what is to come, that this is, especially with the Gemini energy, it just seemed like it's a bad time for It's a bad time for trying to conduct your fuckery out in the open, and even trying to keep it hidden, even if it's, you know, like the use of obfuscating words. This would be a bad time. People will get caught unless they're clean. And he kind of even said, you know, even regular people, it might be a good time to, you know, go through your hard disk and, you know, delete things that just have been sitting there, and you know, it's not even for somebody might discover it. It's like this is a time of cleaning out. Excuse me. So with the regular, you know, archontic astrology indicating this is a bad time for fuckery and telling lies or obfuscations. At the same time, if the moon rises, and I'm pretty sure it will, but until it does, we don't have confirmation. That'll be within like 36 hours after the new moon, so sometime on Thursday. But it looks like the moon will arise in the constellation of the Twins, and that brings up a Dakini named one of the many names. They all have many names, and that's because we name them. Bagalamukhi, and she has an interesting energy. One of the iconographies of this Dakini is her having a lying demon, she's in a seat, he's at the floor, and she's holding his tongue out in her hand across her lap. And if I recall, she has something, you know, like kind of like a whacking stick in her other hand. A whacking stick. But so this is so we have two things converging. So if in the regular archontic astrology there's an indication that this is a bad time for people making plans because they would get caught in the process, it might explain why this was a big weekend for all of these meetings to occur. Why it seems like, you know, this is happening, the G7 is happening, NATO's happening. I mean, all these different meetings, all kind of happening on this weekend, and it's almost like were they trying to get what they can get done before the new moon, because even their own astrology informs them this is not you know, it's like do this now, because this next month, and especially right after this new moon, it's not going to be a good time. And getting caught is never anything that is part of their plans. So for many ways, the meetings this weekend could have been prophylactic from their worldview, cosmological view. And then from the kind of Gnostic, Celestic side, we if the Dakini that I think is going to come on shift does come on shift, it would make people who are not truthful either be tongue-tied, speak gibberish, or reveal themselves. Conversely, because of the twin action, those who are speaking good things, wholesome things, and let's call it, the truth, just to have a word to use, that they will find themselves unusually gifted. Like they may think they're they might think they're about to say, a few words and end up almost in an oration of deep, meaningful language. So that's the other thing. It would be the gift of better communicative language that is clear and clean, powerful. Somebody who thought that they were just going to kind of maybe skirt around an issue finds that their tongue turned into a flamethrower, and is incinerating lies with truth. So there's so I said, yes, astrologically, zodiacally, pretty interesting portents in the sky. And then celestically, again, we're not there yet, but sky watching, it looks like that's going to be the energy. So, all right, that's that part of it. I'm going to take a look at the chat. Hello, RC. Greet anybody that I haven't greeted. Hello, Meandering Mystic. Okay, I think I've greeted everybody. So, acknowledgements. So I'd like to acknowledge Joe from the Carolinas for his very creative builder bugs. Love that, Joe. That's art. That's riffing. I like that a lot. And of course, insects, and this I like it also because insects are part of the natural world. In this case, when I'm thinking about bugs, well, to me this would be the make-believe insects, the ones that bug us. And so when you have builder bugs, you might need to do some bug smashing. And that's part of our focus and empowerment, and that's one of the things I really also want to acknowledge Joe for, was taking a moment where some people might be like, oh, what are they planning? And it's just like, let them plan. First of all, if there's any bad plans, consumed by fire, melted away in the candle. If you want something to stand, well then get wholesome with it. So I acknowledge his creativity with the builder bugs, with good counter magic, with what he did there, and then just having a good conversation. So I enjoy that. Another acknowledgement will be Calendal. He put out a video a short time after the live stream I did the other night, the other Mystic Brew. I think it was Friday night. About I don't have the exact title, but it was about being content and content, or being content with content. And it was it was in the first 5 minutes that I heard that. He chooses music for his background that I find difficult to listen to while listening to words. So I made it through about 5 or 6 minutes when I had to turn off the music, unfortunately. But I managed to get what I thought certainly was, what he had to say, at least in the first 5 or 6 minutes, about content and content. And so to me, what got revealed there, and this is an acknowledgement of Calendal putting that out, is that I know a few of us are probably going to adopt this, where I will no longer consider myself a content creator on YouTube. This is not meant to make people content. This is not an atmosphere for contentment. This is a year of discontent. Discontent for an ugly world being piloted by psychopaths on our beautiful planet, on our beautiful Mother Earth, Gaia. So no longer will myself, and I'm quite sure others will get it and go there. We will no longer be content creators. We will be context creators. And that word context, also I will give credit to Kalendal because he presenced that. So from content creators to context creators. Creating context for focus and for working together. For focus and working together in the season of discontent. And working together is what a community does. A community works together. Any sense of, any competitive sense is you compete with your own, with yourself actually. You compete with your own dreaming or imagery of who you are. And then you do what you do, and then you measure what you're doing or have just done with what your optimal performance level looks like for yourself. One based in reality, and that one that is achievable. And so you compete with your ideal of yourself. And then you know, so the metric you're looking at is how you're performing against your own plan for who you are. Now, regarding looking at other people, hello Kalendal, you know, regarding like looking at other people are inspiration. You might see somebody doing something really well and you're going, I want to check out how that person is being so productive. I want to see if there's something they're doing that I cannot also open source, bring into my own self. And it isn't to compete with them with what they're doing. It is just that you see somebody at a high performance level, you might want to know, what are their habits? You know, what is it about them that makes them perform well in a way that you admire their work? Not to compete with them. You compete with your own self. You trust me, our own ideals of ourselves, and then making those ideals come true is all the that's a plate full of competition right there. And so I really enjoy, like I said, I got a really great kick out of, you know, tuning into Joe from the Carolinas, where his opening part was about getting right to it, identifying that there are builder-buggers with, and he used the word anti-life also in his language. Anti-life ideas, plans. There's one other word, it'll come to me. That, you know, this fire would consume them, this sage would clear them. It was beautiful. And to me, was again, that was us working together. Whether he saw it or he didn't doesn't make a difference. We're riffing, we're working from the same song. It also, if I talk about it on Friday night and he has a similar discussion on Saturday night going into Sunday, at least on the East Coast, now we have focus. And we are focusing on something that we can do together. So now we have teamwork. It's also, again, he also identified, as I did, you know, this battlefield is in the psyche. It's in the psychological space. So when there's a focus about, well, they think they're doing this, but we're going to do this as counter magic, that changes our psychological space. That it's no longer a victim place for invasion. It's now kind of a sovereign place that we're going to hold. We've put our feet on that ground, and we're going to keep our feet on that ground, because it's a psychological one. It's one that requires your focus, your intention, and your will. And you're going, we enter this space and we stay. We stay in this space. And other people who thought they had that space to themselves will be made most uncomfortable. And they will probably try to create clouds of gnats and mosquitoes to discourage us, and those gnats and mosquitoes can be batted away, seen for the desperate attempts that they are, and also a case of, is that all you got? But again, we say it to ourselves. There's no need. The challenge of that space is by being there. There's no need for great bravado. Just stand in your sovereignty that we belong on this earth, and we belong in the supernatural, because natural and supernatural are part of a continuum. Hello, Lisa Gray. I've been giving props to Joe from the Carolinas for his show last night, and the commonality of a theme that I had done the night before, and how great it is, and how I just see it as cross inspiration, being in part of the same kind of group mind, or even a wholesome egregore. And this, a case in point, is how I was working on a title, and I'll Walk was inspired to write a new song from some things that were discussed on Friday night. And he shared, he's been sharing the song as it progresses, and the words, just wonderful to see. Wonderful to see the words just if they were standalone, but when somebody shares and say, well, you've been part of the inspiration here, you've kind of inspired me to do this, wow. Because what I try to do in these streams is to inspire, to get inside your head, to inspire in that place. Raksha's the teacher. I share. And in my sharing, I hope to inspire. It's my intent to inspire. Hello, Jorge. So then when he mentioned to me, kind of alluded, you would inspired me. Well, then I kind of gotten the whole idea of working together, and then the description of this show is talking about our community and the cross inspirations that arise. So one of my streams inspired him, or in a direction for words for his song, and then him telling me that I inspired me to speak about inspiration in this live stream. There's some cross inspiration. And like I said, if Joe did get somewhat inspired, if he had seen my Friday night stream and then took it in the continuation and doing it in his own way, I love that. And that's, again, more cross inspiration. And these cross inspirations start creating a field of their own. They start creating a webbing of their own. And Raksha came in here with a big spider, wanting to let him know that we have a web to weave. Our web. And the interesting thing about the web that you weave is that you can walk on it without getting stuck. That it's safe. Our own webs become our own tapestry. And in certain cases, ways of ensnaring that which means us ill. So this cross inspiration is a form of tapestry weaving, or web weaving in the sense of spider. No, I'm glad. You know something, Joe? I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you didn't mention my name, and part of it is also because, we can have our conversations. I don't need a pat on the head or quote unquote acknowledgement per se. I like the idea of, like, if we're all paying attention, a wink and a nod is all that's required. And it's in having these kind of little conversations after the fact that we start realizing, you know what, we're going to be able to do a lot of winking and nodding, and still have probably even clearer than usual communications, because we end up using less words, and with the current confusion of language, less words can often mean less confusion. I spent a lot of time I got out of bed yesterday a little bit late, because Friday night I needed to recharge from what went on Friday night, and it wasn't necessarily in a bad way, but I put out some juice doing that, and so it was time for me to just sit within that energy, and any extra energy to feed into what that ritual was, as a continuation. The candle burnt down completely. There was a period where I saw where there was some interference that came into my space, and the fire at one point looked like it was struggling to stay lit. So I encouraged it, and it did stay lit, and then it grew strong, and it consumed all the wax of the candle that represented any anti-life plans, concepts, or ideas. Completely consumed it. All gone. And and I alluded to like gnats and mosquitoes, and I'd already shared with at least one other person here, on our, again, there's a lot of private conversations, and private aren't secret, it's just one-on-ones, how while that candle was still burning, and I hadn't turned out my lights, and what appeared to be fruit flies, first one was buzzing right around my face, landing on my nose. Then it went to like 2 or 3. And I was doing my kind of getting ready to go to sleep connection into my heart, which means into wisdom, which means into Gaia Sophia, because Sophia means wisdom. And that's when all of a sudden these, what I think were fruit flies, and now I happen to have to keep a little compost thing. I have compost outside, but sometimes as I eat my whether it's a banana or an avocado, I put them on the side, especially the avocado shells. I like the avocado shells to dry so I can break them up into little pieces, because then that way they break up a lot easier in the compost. A full avocado shell kind of resists, because you only have those edges on the outside where the real eating can start. When you break it up into little pieces, then they just consume a lot quicker that way. And so it just seemed like, okay, I mean, I'm used to having fruit flies in my room, but I'm not used to having them kind of harass me. And then so I'm kind of in that place of connection, and it just was, basically, yeah, well, you just sent out a pretty strong signal, and they have their dark defense team. And whether or not they can identify exactly where it's coming from, there's like return magic. It's just like, okay, this is coming from here, so we just send fuckery along that trajectory line. So I was kind of then instructed to ignore them, because that's all they got. And as soon as I ignored them, that's when they stopped bothering me. And especially because I kind of saw it as like you know, there was some ordinance thrown that way, if there was any anti-life plans, concepts, or ideas happening. And then it seemed like there was, again, there was a counter energy thrown along the lines that of the received energy. But my instruction was, they have to do something, and this is what they have. So consider the impotence of it. Not everybody, there were other people on receiving ends of return fire, and some got hit a little harder than myself, at least in the real time. And so last night's candle burning was to one of creating a kind of a protective field around those of us that are engaging in this. And it's kind of anybody who's engaging in this counter magic would be part of this, using fire actually as a protective agent to burn away any incoming. Okay, RC, be well, take care of yourself. And because there are a lot of us who are really combining our efforts, and some of us are doing it, you know, by actually meeting and comparing notes, which is ideally I feel the best shamanic way. When shamans share their notes, a much clearer picture arises, because we all kind of are going into the same landscape, but different things catch our eyes. And then when we come back together and we share what we took back from basically the same landscape, we're able to recall for each other, or bring focus to one other journeyer, to things that, you know, is that we have our separate focuses, and then we bring them together. We are able to, our own focus increases, it expands, and it's just a way of, and here comes the word, the new word I want us to really presence, where we audit each other. Now, it's really interesting how auditing has become this kind of thing that, you know, criminals in the financial industry will do to people. Audit comes from to hear, or auditory, hearing. So if we're doing our journeying, or even like we do, one of us, you know, does a rune reading, an animal card pull, whatever, and I really apologize for what's coming in the room. It's movie night. And quite distracting. When we share our experiences, what we're doing, if we want to, and I think it's something we should actually create the word and the intention of that, we audit each other. And that means we listen, or we correctly hear what the other person has gotten from their journeying, and we kind of, and also we know the person, so generally we can, you know, just do a clearing with each other, and then the assembling into a greater whole. And to me, it's a method of keeping each other in integrity and honest. And the integrity and honesty can sometimes just be lost by having to work alone. Without another perspective that might allow you to make an adjustment that would be, that you know is that's what I needed. I needed that from you to adjust my own retrieval, my own unpacking. And so the whole idea of the audit, and I like the word awe in there, Calendal. But in the auditing, we can discover the awe in this work, and in this recovery, and in this restoration of the planet, and a world that represents the dreaming of the planet instead of the mimicry, mockery, and envy of the demiurge and his angelic mafia. By the way, anybody who thinks TV is such a great instrument, I hope you're appreciating TV for all its wonderment right now. Because occasionally I go after TV and people go, oh, but TV's all right. Well, I just hope there's a few of you here because you're getting all that good TV right during this broadcast. The wonder of TV, where secrets of the Illuminati might be discovered. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that's the ticket. That's where you're going to find wisdom, in TV programs, and in movies, and in video games. Yeah, a lot of wisdom is put into that material. Good, Lisa. I'm glad, because one of the reasons I use a good recording mic is it tends to not pick up things that are too far away from it, and it's and I have it angled towards me and away from there. So I'm very happy for that feedback, Lisa. So, gee, we're coming up in an hour. I planned my Gnostic live streams. Can't You Hear Me Gnostic will always try to run at least 2 hours. These at around the hour time, I start assessing whether or not do I really have a lot more focused information to share. And then if I don't, I start to wind it down. But I'm enjoying that more people in this community are starting to, like, I'll pick out Meandering Mystic and Calendal. Meandering Mystic has really been on a good context creation role. And that's actually, I'm looking at the, we say they're on a roll, and then you can think of ROLE. So on his context role. And Calendal has thoughts, and that he's starting to look for ways, I guess, to express in a way that he's content with. And so looking for context that he's content with, and part of that is doing it. I know that my Can't You Hear Me Gnostic live streams have definitely improved by doing them. Because live streaming, especially live streaming, is its own beast. And then just talking by yourself into a non-live stream where you don't have people you're interacting with, that's a skill all itself. Talking to yourself basically while you're talking to others. Kind of speaking to an audience that hasn't even showed up yet, that will show up in the future. So there are two different ways of approaching being in front of a camera that you're going to put onto YouTube. And so I'm just, the people who in our community that I'm aware of that have kind of in recent times starting to put out more context for us to consider is Meandering Mystic and Calendal. Niche has had her own has her own YouTube where she puts out her relatively short videos that are based on her poetry and a lot of imagery. But she's been doing that on a regular basis, whether people know it or not. Speculum Niche is that YouTube channel, and that's where she puts that part of her work, part of her art. Interestingly enough, I've noticed, certain other live streamers have been a little quiet lately, and but it looks like that's going to be changing. And with the coming both zodiacal and what I believe will be the next Dakini shift, where the focus is about on speech, and basically the different energies that will affect speech coming from integrity and speech coming from deception. And seeing what that looks like in the form of, interviews, public statements, and also maybe some people who in the past might have been saying a little bit, and then from a good place, from a wholesome place, and then suddenly they're like, they've become like, a bubbling spring of communication. So, and I say that's because it'd be interesting, because to seem to perceive an effect that will be in place, and then going into that time and observing, okay, there was a concept of what this effect will be. What does it look like when we're there? What is the environment look like? What how is speech? How are what will President Trump's tweets be like in this period? What will reporters reporting on either something grave or, as more often than not, inconsequential? Will people who seek to mislead in their reporting suddenly find that what they thought they were going to say, what's even written on a teleprompter, seems like it just can't get the tongue to wrap around it, or go into one of those strange meltdowns where somebody is like speaking in tongues type of thing. So this was really about my own wanting to share about acknowledging my own inspiration, in this the inspiration to kind of even pick a topic from Alex, or I'll walk, expressing inspiration from my stream, so I'm inspired that he's inspired. The inspiration of Kalendal, looking at the word content as in we are content creators, and seeing right in there that it really is about content, that apparently in many ways much of the content has been pacifying. And we're in it right now, since we're entering the psychological battle space. This is not a time to be content. The whole reason we're in a psychological battle space is because we've acknowledged the fuckery going on, and it has created discontent with the human animal, with the human species. And the discontent of the planetary animal mother, of the lack of access that her own creation had, the lack of access that her own creation has on the planet created for that creation. The fact that you need a permit to plant this or build this, again, the endless paperwork on a planet that requires no paperwork. It requires no paperwork to provide. You don't need paperwork to provide what time you were born, what hospital you were born in. It's not required. Now, of course, in small communities, you had record keepers, and it was part of kind of the ancestral memory. Very different thing than a requirement. So there's that inspiration. Being the inspiration I got from seeing Joe from the Carolinas take a word like Bilderbergs, turn it into Builder Bugs, so brilliant, and then throughout this weekend that this was going on, to take people into that psychological battle space and keep them encouraged, keep them focused in that space, to make them aware that there are tools to bring into that space, and part of it is just getting into that space. So this, so that, if I'm kind of doing the cheerleading on Friday night, and then Joe's doing cheerleading on Saturday night, this is great. This is teamwork, all done with a wink and a nod. No need to meet and create great plans. Just people going, hey, I'm on the same team, and I can, in my inspiration and my own creativity, realize that this is a wholesome riff. It's like being in a song. There's certain riffs that'll work and certain works. It's like, what are you doing there, dude? Or dudette. So that just that teamwork that comes from being competent, knowing who you are, and not needing to get. We don't need permission in our open sourcing of the work that we're doing here. Hello, Madfinger. And so that's really what this was about, is the acknowledging each other, whether it's verbally or just even acknowledging it in that space, like, in real time, like, ooh, this is great. And even before I got a chance to acknowledge Kalendal in this stream, he was already acknowledged with me. Even when I spoke with Raksha last night, I said, I really like what Kalendal said about content, 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 and context, and how we will no longer be content creators. We will be context creators. Hello, Sarath. And we will engage in cross inspiration. And I say, whether we do verbal acknowledgements or just the energetic acknowledgement of each other. Because in that acknowledgement of each other, we realize, man, this is a pretty good team here. This community is, it's one thing to be a community, it's another thing to start actually having teamwork within the community. The kind of coordination that, what's a body without a nervous system that can coordinate the moving parts? You either are kind of can't move at all. You might smack yourself in the face when you went to scratch yourself. You need the parts need to coordinate, or you get undesirable effects. And there's also that trust that we're creating, that telepathic connection, that sense, that gnosis of each other, of our intent, and where we're going, and that we're kind of on the same page. We see a similar landscape with similar unwholesome critters in that landscape, and we're going to shoo them away. We're going to put on what happens in the animal kingdom. We will put on a proper threat display. And in most cases, a threat display is ready to throw down. But the main purpose of the threat display is something, you've come into my territory, and so here's the threat display. But leaving is going to your room will be sufficient. And so I just want to kind of share these about the focus and working together, and the energizing effect, the empowering effect of acknowledging others and ourselves, acknowledging yourself. And that's part of why, why we want to audit each other. You know, Kalendal throws out an idea: content, content, context. So, and you might be, you know, am I onto something? Well, you might say, hey, you know, in my own sense, I feel like I'm onto something. That's why I put it out there. But when other people go, oh yeah, dude, yeah, you're onto something. And not only are you onto something, you have that, what you shared has shifted my language, my understanding, gives me context for what I am doing, what we are doing. So again, I hope you see like how this all feeds into a beautiful cauldron of intent and a good mystic brew. So I'm going, if anybody has, you know, I mean, I doubt there's any questions here, but if you want to make any final comments to myself or to your other fellow people in the chat, we'll hold this open for a few more minutes and just allow us to acknowledge each other, bring focus on teamwork, and look for the cross inspirations. Look for those inspirations that other people give you, and if they do happen, first of all, acknowledge it for yourself that that you were inspired by another person. Just wait, because that right away creates a sense of teamwork. And if you get the chance, acknowledge the other person for doing that, because that then feeds them. That allows them to know, hey, I'm kind of like, I'm mining the right stuff. I'm in the right vein, and that feedback, that acknowledgement is crucial for some people who are just beginning, and they might, well, maybe this isn't it. And if you get a couple of people going, hey man, no, that's it. How about, you know, like that's a good kind of brilliance that you bring there. So so do that. Do more of that. And then, of course, when we're working in inspired space, don't feel the need that, you know, don't get into like, oh, I'm expected to do this. Unless, of course, in some case, like if I had like an open thing. So in an open thing and I haven't scheduled it, then I would say, okay, I don't have the juice. Something like that I'm committed to, like every Monday night doing Can't You Hear Me Gnostic. Well, that's something I make sure, just like if I had a job, that I've, you know, I've done the proper preparation for it, cleared my space, and I'm actually sometimes even saving some energy, almost like putting energy aside, and so that way when I turn on the camera and start the stream, there's kind of like a cup of energy I can drink from. Hello, Darcy. And I'm very, you know, I really have been finding the chat just focused. The chats lately have been, hello, Vernon. Didn't even see your name pop up, but I'm seeing people say hello to you, so that's one of the things that's good about people greeting each other. If I miss the person when they first come in, I see the other people say it. So glad you could join us, Vernon. So we have somebody from New Zealand, and we have two people from New Zealand here, and this is like, I don't know, I guess somewhere in their afternoon, early afternoon, I believe, on Monday. And yeah, so I've really found the chats to be inspirational in that there's a real sharing between what I'm saying live and then what other people are chatting live. It's interesting you say Cat Stevens, because I'm wearing something tonight that was something that after Cat Stevens went Muslim, he started wearing some longer things, and this particular garment is Moroccan design. I think what they call jalabas. Kind of, it goes down. Oh, I'm not going to stand all the way back, but it goes down. I guess it's about this far off of my ankle, and it's nice, and it has a little. If you want, I have little inlets for pockets if I need to get into my pockets. So for me, that was a little bit of Darcy, that was a little bit of a synchronicity that you mentioned Cat Stevens and how, again, after he embraced his, because I guess apparently he was a Cypriot Muslim, a Greek Cypriot Muslim, I think. So I thought that was kind of funny. So there we go. It's 3:13 p.m. on Monday in New Zealand. So anyway, so tomorrow night will be Can't You Hear Me Gnostic at its normal 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time slot. And so at an hour and 12 minutes, I think this is once again, this was a kind of like a short, and I just to keep the energy that I see us weaving into a beautiful tapestry, just to kind of acknowledge that weaving, the enjoyment of being a part of it, being one of the people riffing into it, the cross inspirations that are happening, and just a little bit of keeping us focused and knowing that we're a force. We are a force to be dealt with, and much of the planning that has been going on by those who would plan against the human species is for a dumbed down, magically participating human species. To change that metric by entering into that magical, psychological, noospheric space is something that they're going to have a lot more meetings about. And that, and also that's the other thing is who's been on the offensive and who's been on the defensive. And I think this is maybe, at least in this small community, this was one time where it wasn't, oh, they're going on the offense and, what can we do to defend ourselves? And instead we kind of started showing up in their space, on their battlefield, where they expected nobody to show up. And that changes metrics. I mean, like, any strategist, if suddenly you're doing what you're doing, and then there's all these anomalies in your plans that you do not have you don't have contingency plans for. And many of these type of people are not the most creative people. They have to go to their books and look at, what situation in the past looked like this and what was used in the past, because that's how they do things. So there's a certain pondering dinosaur-like quality to them. That's if dinosaurs did in fact ponder. So this, to me, this has started a different change, like I said, at least in our community, where when where the people who probably more likely than not are not the friends of the human species gather, that instead of people going, oh, what are they doing now? It's like, probably, there's a good chance of doing the same thing. What are we doing now? And we did something. That's a game changer. So so just remember, we have it. We have the numbers and we have the talent. We just have to remember we have that talent, and then practice it a little bit. It's kind of like if you haven't picked up a guitar in a long time and you used to really play real well, and you pick up and you can still kind of do it. I mean, magic is our inheritance. It's natural to us. If it wasn't natural, the major religions would not have forbidden it. I mean, it's like, like in many ways they forbade masturbation. So so just to put it in perspective, magic is about as natural to us as masturbation. So if you can kind of put it in that context, you go, really? I mean, as natural as masturbation? Yeah, as a natural an instinct and a talent as masturbation. So remember that, and practice your magic less than your masturbation. Although there are ways of using that energy to kick in a magic ritual. Like you've got something in place and you're going to kind of like give it a little extra kick. Well, there are sexual magics to kick it. Including taking matters into your own hands, so to speak. So that's it for this mystic brew, acknowledgements, focus, and working together. And I will see those of you I will see tomorrow night at Can't You Hear Me Gnostic. And my thank you for all those who participated. And hello, Oswald. And so that's it. And I'm just going to kind of turn off my streaming.